Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Pat Domenico. Hope I pronounced that correctly and correct. And he is based in Australia, so he got a really early, guys, to talk to us. So, can you introduce yourself, Pat, and say hi?
Yeah. Hey, Bridget, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come on your show and getting a chance to speak to your guest.
I love what you're doing. My understanding is that Pat is focusing on like being a resilient dad and how important that is. And I was curious as to what, we like to share stories here on this podcast and what we learned from them and what made you want to focus on resilience. I was just curious.
I guess it comes from the experience as seeing myself as a child and seeing my dad in the situation of being separated from my mum, and the experiences that I witnessed from him in terms of his own I guess ability to deal with the challenges that he was faced after separation, and not no longer being in the same situation as seeing his kids every day and so forth. And I saw my dad from, my dad was my hero when I was young, and seeing someone that you envision as like, I guess, Superman, to then eventually seeing him, in terms of slowly, losing his own sort of ability in himself, and in terms of pretty much, I found my dad at the end of, what was it? After 10 years, I hadn't seen him. When my parents finally separated when I was 13, I hadn't seen him for about 10 years after that. And the first time I had seen him was the day that my brother passed away.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it was a very challenging day, and it was I guess the last thing I really thought was going to happen after not seeing him for so long. But I'd seen him, and he looked in a pretty bad state. And unfortunately, my dad suffered from alcohol addiction, and that was, I guess, his choice of way of dealing with his emotions and trauma and challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
How old was your brother? I'm just curious. How old was your brother? How old were you?
My brother was just shy a couple of months of 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. He, unfortunately, at the age of 2, my brother had an accident during a procedure at the hospital, where he was left without any oxygen for I think 20 minutes from memory. And he was left with brain damage, and he had cerebral palsy. And I think the challenges of my dad dealing with losing I guess his son in an aspect of that, as well as the challenges of going through separation, I think that took a toll on his mental state. And I actually only had recently found out from a discussion with my mum that when my dad initially came to Australia, so my dad escaped Vietnam with his brother when he was 16, and I didn't know, but they'd actually stopped in Indonesia initially before coming to Australia, and they spent 18 months in a detention centre. Now a lot of things make a lot more sense.
Was he Vietnamese, or I'm just...
Correct, he was Vietnamese.
Oh, wow, we got something in common, guys. I'm part Vietnamese too.
Oh, there you go.
My grandmother was.
Wow.
I never met her, though. She died before I was born.
Okay.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've only recently found that out. So he had his own challenges even prior to even meeting my mum and them getting married and having kids. So I think the compound effect of having those challenges, as well as not necessarily dealing with them in a positive way, I guess health, and he wasn't the type of person that would be really focused on his well-being, and being
Not many
healthy.
men are,
No,
right? They aren't.
generally not.
No, they're
Generally
just
not.
not. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but
But yeah, so I didn't see him for nearly 10 years after passing of my brother, and then I went to visit him actually for the first time, and it was a really hard experience because my dad was living in someone's garage,
oh wow.
and seeing, like you're saying, your superhero to someone that's living in that state, it was quite challenging, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to get back on his feet, and he passed shortly, not long after, maybe 3-4 years after that sort of
Connected
reconnection.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there, I guess the story doesn't end in terms of having my own experience. So the one thing that I always wanted to avoid as a child was having my own children in that same situation. And I guess the thing that you resist so much generally persists. And so, yeah, I found myself in the situation where my first son, unfortunately, his mother and I, we found out that she was pregnant after we'd separated or had broken up and finished the relationship. And so the one thing I didn't want, I was presented with, and at the time you just think, why does this have to happen, and this is not what I wanted. And it's I guess the journey of having the experience to co-parent, with someone else started there from an early stage of my son's life.
I just want to comment that you're very brave, just because a lot of men don't bring this up, right? I mean, I'm just from my perspective, they don't. I push it back and hide it, and it's really common. I think what your story that you're sharing, a lot of people have dealt with something similar, right?
Yes.
And I'm from a divorced family. My husband's my mom was married 3 times by the time I was 17. So that affected me. And then my husband had a deal. I think his parents got, I don't know how old you were when your parents got divorced, but it affects you, and you want to make sure you have good, right? That's why the resilience thing is so important, to learn from that. And everybody's dealing with something like that, I think, some shape or form.
Absolutely. And my, I guess, way of dealing with things as a child was I was very active and committed to my sports, and for me that was like my getaway, like 5-6 days a week. That was my escape from everything that was going on.
Oh, we have so much in common. Oh, sorry, my phone's ringing. Yeah, we have so much. I did the same thing. A lot of I didn't want to be at home, right? Yeah. And and I think that sports became really popular for. I don't know how old you were when this happened, but it became popular in the 70s and 80s, and which is good.
Yeah. Well, I was actually 5 when my parents first separated. Wow. And my mum and I and my brother, who'd recently had the accident not long prior, we went over to Italy for 6 months.
Okay.
So that was the first time my parents reconnected, and then the final time was when I was 13.
Right.
So yeah.
Did your mom get remarried at all, or? She
did a few years later, after they finally had separated, and I think as a child, and I guess once you get to a little bit of an older stage, it's really hard to see and understand that someone else is come into your family dynamics and how does this work. And I guess for me, being so young, it was like, well, my dad's not there, so I kind of have to step up and be the man of the house, and
right, for your brother, right? Yeah.
Correct. So yeah, it was a very challenging dynamic, going from having to grow up so young and, you know, having to do these things that I guess you wouldn't expect a child to do, but then to have another man, and what's my place in terms of with my mum and so
Right.
forth. Yeah.
I'm glad that you're still connected to your mother, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had our challenging moments.
Right. We all right. We all do.
Yeah. But you know, recently we've reconnected again, and you know, I now see things differently in terms of that. I am the person I am because of the experiences I've had. You know, if my mum and dad were exactly the way that I envisioned and wanted, you know, I wouldn't be who I am today. So that's I guess the gift.
You had a good imagination, which is good. Your imagination helps, and creativity probably helps you.
Yeah, definitely. Because you know, as a kid, you always, you know, you see other parents and other families, and you think, well, why is that not me? And why is my mum not like that, or my dad, or why does why is my dad having these challenges that he has?
Right.
So yeah.
What part of Australia did you grow up in? I'm just curious.
In Melbourne, Australia.
Okay.
Victoria. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful. It's supposed to be, my understanding, a beautiful place to be.
Yeah. No, it is. I've lived in New South Wales, in Sydney for a year, and also in Western Australia in Perth. And you always come back to I can't compare Melbourne to any other city in Australia.
Right. Yeah. That is, it's, I think it's, like I said, mentioned earlier, you're very brave in sharing your story, and you I know you are a resilient dad yourself, right? Because based on what you've learned, and do you have just one child? I didn't know if you have more than one child.
Yeah. So I'm married now.
Okay.
To a beautiful wife for nearly 4 years now, and we've got 2 young boys also.
Oh, wow.
So 3.5 and 1. So yeah, so my oldest Christopher's nearly 6 in September.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Luke is 3.5, and Alessio is just over a year now, about 15, 16 months.
I think you're gonna enjoy raising boys. I have boys too, not 3. I have 2 sons, but they're a different kind of raising than girls. They joke that moms don't live as long. Moms of boys, it's a joke. They do dangerous things. I mean, they're risky. I'm assuming it's great that you're married and you have 3 boys, and your wife is helping you raise them. But again, you're going to apply what you learned growing up to make sure they don't have to deal with that.
Absolutely. And one of the, I guess, breakthroughs or insights for me of recent was understanding how young a child actually understands and is aware of their environment and what's happening. And like my 3-year-old, he's just we were just at the dinner table one evening, and he was saying to me, are you going to come and live with us at our new house? And I'm like, I'm thinking, a 3-year-old, like, how does he, like, I know, because I traveled to the other side of Australia.
Gotcha.
So my other son is he lives in Melbourne, and we've
Gotcha.
only recently moved to Perth in the last year. And when he said that, I was like, wow, like, even me only traveling maybe 3-4 times in 4 consecutive months, he's aware that I'm not here. And he's only 3, so I was
noticing, right? Kids are really smart. Children are very smart. They do notice things, and you probably noticed a lot of stuff like you had said when that you were 5 years old when all this
Yeah.
happened. And
And
yeah, it's amazing that the story that you're sharing. Sorry that my dogs are walking in the room.
that's right. All good.
I love dogs. Sorry, you can hear their nails on the floor, people that are
No
listening.
worries.
And I can't edit that out. It's again, it's amazing the story that you're sharing. And since you travel a lot, it sounds like, how often are you gone? Is it like a week or 2 weeks? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it works out to be roughly about a week,
Okay.
generally. But yeah, and it's only been for the last probably 4 or 5 months, because we've had some challenges here in Australia with COVID, with flying from one part to the other.
That was hard during that time frame. And
so, yeah.
I would think what did you learn from COVID raising kids? Because it was, like you said, it was harder with the traveling. What did your biggest takeaway from that?
My biggest takeaway was I was very fortunate being in the construction and property industry, because we were, in terms of the amount of days we were locked down and restricted, I think it was only about a week that I experienced. Whereas a lot of other industries had a lot more challenging situations where it was months on end.
Yeah. The construction stuff still had to happen, and then you just still had to build something. What I do, what I'm involved in, it was affected by the supply chain.
Yeah.
And it's just weird how I think we all learned something. I think we all learned, for me, what's important to your family and to you. That's kind of how I look at it, and to focus on that.
Absolutely. I could see how easily people were, in terms of their mindsets, were influenced. And like you're saying, in terms of having the mindset of what they didn't have, and what was happening to them, and not necessarily looking at the opportunity that was presented. Like, you get to work from home, you can spend more time with your family, you can, you don't have to travel, maybe commute a couple hours a day just to get back and forth from work. So you might be able to fit in that, you can go outside for that jog or that walk, and just, do the things that we generally don't get to do because of the dynamics.
Yeah, that's a good point. I noticed more people are outside more walking, and I'm a big runner and walker, and I noticed more people are outside, which is a good takeaway, right, from that COVID. And they realized, wow, I've got more time. While I'm still here, use that time in an important manner. And I would think people who are traveling less be able to, like, people they're able to hang around with their kids more. And I heard some people complain, I don't know about in Australia, about the school stuff. That was really difficult. Here in the US, my sister's a teacher, so it was crazy. She teaches a 7th and 8th grade, and wow, right? I praise the teachers and people in what they have to do to deal with the parents and the children.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been an easy in terms of a situation for teachers to have to automatically change the situation.
It was hard on them.
Yeah.
When they had the lockdown in our county that we live in my state, they had 24 hours to come up with the teachers had 24 hours to start. Now this year's better. It was just when it first was enacted. Is that the right word? Enacted. Yeah. They didn't know how to use Zoom like we know how to use Zoom, right? And
we adapt.
Right. And so now they're good at it. And in the beginning, so that's the plus side of technology. I think we were able to communicate and teach kids that way. It's just amazing how I always try to look, my role model for me, like I mentioned, my mom was married 3 times, was my mom's last husband. they were 17 when I got married, and I had an attitude, because I was 17 already. But he had the biggest impact on our family, most positive. And he was, in the military, but he made us like, look, what's in the good in that situation, right? Right. Rather than focusing on the negative. And I would think as a dad, I think as a man, show them how to get through that and be, like you mentioned, being resilient. Is so critical.
I think that's literally probably one of the greatest gifts any parent can pass on to their kids, the ability to deal with and process and work through challenges and not looking at it like, regardless, life is going to constantly throw challenges at us, even when we think everything's going right, before we know it, there'll be some sort of curveball thrown. So, seeing that is in terms of, there's a lesson, whether it's in terms of growth and opportunity, and being able to pass that on to our kids from such a young age. I think that's definitely.
It was very helpful. And I'm not saying to ignore it, but acknowledge what you're dealing with and then find a way or and there's not always just one solution, and be open. But he always, what's the good? That's what he was. He was, it was amazing the people that I met. He passed away unexpectedly about 6 years ago, but he was a badass because of the military. But then he always he was so positive, which is what is needed. I think more people need to be positive, and I think a male role model like that is more of that is needed. That's how I think. Because that's what he taught.
Did he contribute that to his time in the military?
Probably. He had this learned that he had a good diplomacy skill, right? He was in special forces and a ranger, and, he was risky he was super risky. I'm going, that's how he was, adventurous. But he learned he had this diplomacy skill that he eventually wasn't in the battlefield anymore, right? He was dealing with a diplomat, in like Africa a lot. And that's what he applied, so that they saw that, which was good. They saw that in him. And then he was able to, that's why people liked him so much, because he didn't judge you. And that's what he was such a good role. And I think that's what we need more of that. And I actually wrote a book about him, but that's what I thought, this is because like my real dad, I didn't see him much. He was in the Vietnam War, and he, what's the word? I didn't know. I was like, I don't know how old he was when he left. I was maybe 3, but then they got divorced. I didn't understand that. You didn't understand that as a child, right?
Yeah.
But my mom did good, thank goodness. But she's from France, so she was an immigrant to the United States. Married immigrant. That's why I think what you're doing and meeting with your traveling, I think it's a really good experience that you can pass on to your kids, what you're learning from that. I think being in a bubble isn't good for you. That's just my perspective.
No, it's even just the traveling itself. For me, it's, I get questions in terms of, why do you have to go so frequently? In terms of, couldn't you just spread it out to the holidays? And it's like, no. For me, it's, I want boys to always know that in terms of, regardless of the dynamics and how it might be challenging for me, I'm going to utilize every minute that I have, these 24 hours, and make the most of it. And, I'm going to do that travel as frequent as I have to make sure that my son understands that, regardless if I'm not in the same state, I'm still there.
You're still there, right? You're still there to support him. And you had mentioned the sports aspect. What sports are they interested in?
I've played a wide range of sports, so from basketball to tennis to soccer to Australian football, rugby league. I've even played American football for about 6-7 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to represent Australia versus. We played in the World Cup qualifier against South Korea uh, in 2006, 7. Yep. So yeah, I guess for me that movement and being able to I guess exert myself was a great way of dealing with
Probably release a lot of tension in you too.
Oh, absolutely. And I only really appreciated it once I stopped. As you get older, I started working for myself. Then your commitment your commitment's more there. Then you have children. You get married, and for me, it was like either if I'm not playing sport, if I'm not out on the field, it's like, well, it's not really the same for me as going for a walk, or I kind of lost a touch of that sort of,
right,
just to enjoy that movement. And yeah, I didn't really appreciate it until later, where I went from, I think when I started my business, I was about 95 kilos, which I think is close to about 200 pounds.
Okay.
For you guys. And then I quickly shot up to 137 kilos. I put on about, nearly 40 odd kilos, which is, which I think that's just under 100 pounds in maybe 5 months. Yeah, and sorry, not 5 months, 5 years. But and then I realized that in terms of, wow, my coping mechanism was always eating food. Like I was in terms of was being part Italian, and you go to your grandparents' place and it's always about eating and family and sharing and connecting. And so for me, that comfort was always food. So I used that as a coping mechanism, but I was no longer exercising or moving my body as much. So you can quickly throw on the weight. And again, once you get to that, you reach your pain threshold, and you see that you need to, if you're healthy, you need to make a change. And so I went away for 10 weeks to Thailand, and I was able to lose 30 kilos in 10 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And that was great, because I was just constantly exercising, and I was out, in terms of, we would be doing cardio every morning, whether it's having a swim in the ocean, running on the beach, or bike ride, and then doing another session later in the evening. But then you come back to your normal environment, and you can quite easily lose that in terms of
right. It's like a habit. You gotta do a little something. I try to keep it simple. For me, I still run a lot, not every day like I used to. Just I'm older. I don't want to. People are, you're a good runner, you should run marathons. I don't want to hurt myself. You know what I'm saying? It's not worth that because of the health issues I've had. I just need to. I do it because I get the runner's high, to be honest with you. But I enjoy it, and my sons never really got into it. Right? One of them, they got into hockey like their father. My husband was an ice hockey player. But think about that. That's sprinting involved, right? That's still kind of, I think of it as running a little bit. But do your sons have shown any interest in any kind of sport? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So my 3-year-old Luca, he loves playing soccer. So there's a kids sort of indoor kids group. It's only little kids. It's quite interesting to see all these little kids running around.
Right, they're so cute. Yes.
Yeah, but he loves kicking balls and running, and he's always telling me to watch him. Look how fast I am, and he runs from one side of the house to the other. Cool. So he's very active, and my other son, Christopher, he's done a few years of martial arts, so he's done Muay Thai and so forth, and he seemed to enjoy that when he was doing that. But yeah, I hope that they definitely take up the interest of making sports or physical activity.
At least one kind of physical activity, right? And that's just, I just think it's good for them. I think it, for boys especially, keeps them out of trouble because I raised 2 boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It helps, not 100%, but it helps keep them more focused, and they're with a group of other, like-minded people usually.
Yeah.
And it's a good connection. That's what I liked about it. You just make good. They're like family almost. You're the people that you're with. That's just,
absolutely.
It doesn't have to be a sport. It could be whatever, but that's just something that I've always enjoyed. And I know what you're doing. You mentioned that you're going to start a podcast yourself, and it's the Resilient Dad. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, the Resilient Dad Show. So we'll actually be launching the introduction episode today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so that's been in the pipeline for a few months, been working on that. I just, I guess, going through my own experience of the challenges with co-parenting, I saw that there wasn't really much out there in terms of, I guess, dads speaking out about their own experiences and ways that they could, deal with the challenges and come on the other end a lot better than what they even started with. It's a choice whether and the meaning that we put to it and the actions we take.
I think it's great. It's so, men need to hear this, right? And I'm assuming your guests I'm assuming you're going to have guests, or is it just going to be you talking?
Yeah. I'll have guests who are in the space of, in terms of either social services, mental health, health and fitness, and resilient dad role models. So they'll be the main focus of the people that I bring onto the show, and just being able to, I guess, give as much insight to, I guess, how that we're not. There are other fathers that are going through the same thing, and that in terms of there is a better way of always dealing with the matter. We don't have to resort to some of the methods like my father did with alcohol and so forth. And life can be just as good after than it was before.
I love this, and the way you're speaking up, and to help other men and families in general, just to use the stories as an example. It's so helpful. So what is the website? Where can people reach out to you to learn more about you?
So it'll be resilientdad.com. Will be the website where we'll be uploading our weekly episodes, and there'll be an opportunity to connect on our community through Facebook and so forth as well.
Oh, that's cool. So those that are listening, I'll have the links included in the description. I'm also going to have, I guess, some video clips created out of this, guys. So are you going to also have a YouTube stuff videos, or just strictly audio? I'm just real curious, real quick.
It'll be it'll be visual as well through YouTube. We'll be uploading all the episodes and also be available on Spotify and Apple to listen to.
That's awesome. I thank you so much, Pat, and I thank you so much for getting up so early to talk to me. And this has been a great conversation, and thank you for being a great role model for everybody.
No worries. Thanks again.
All right, take care.
Thanks.